Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Greetings. Welcome to SwayamPrabha DTH 16 channel. My name is Ariba Shabbir and we have been discussing English language teaching. Today we are going to start a new perspective of teaching language, and that is through literature. So before we go ahead, let us quickly recapitulate of what we did in the last session. In the last session, we discussed content-based instruction, task-based instruction, and the participatory approach. Besides, we learned the three approaches that may seem different at first glance, but they have one thing in common, that is they focus on communication. The other thing that we learned was that using content from the learner's domain is the crux of the content-based approach. We also learned that task-based approach provides learners with the natural context for language use, and we came to a point that says that participatory approach suggests that not only subject matter text but rather content that is based on issues of concern to students. After this session, you will be able to understand three important approaches of teaching language through literature. And what are these three approaches? Language-based approach, paraphrastic approach, and information-based method of teaching literature. Besides, you will be able to apply the general understanding of these approaches and methods to teaching language through literature pedagogy. Now, let us come to the pitch that we have been focusing in this session. And before we go ahead, let us try to understand that what is literature and why we are focusing to incorporate literature into the language classroom. So, to understand the literature, let us look up at the definition that is being given by Encyclopedia Britannica, and it says that literature is a body of written works. It also says that the name has traditionally been applied to those imaginative works of poetry and prose distinguished by the intentions of their authors and the perceived aesthetic excellence of their execution. Literature may be classified according to a variety of systems, including language, which makes it rich. Besides, there is national origin that is portrayed through literature, and then we can come across through historical period by studying literature. In literature, we find varieties of genre, and also we get to know about the subject matter. So, this is the definition of the literature. However, this perception varies from one author to the other, and we will now look up at the definition and also its explanation from different perspectives. So, I will take up the new slide and will try to explain how this literature looks like with different scenarios. Now, we will try to understand literature in simple terms. So, I am using this slide to help you explain this concept. Literature is basically a very broad topic to take into consideration, and it represents culture and tradition. Now, when we say culture and tradition, it simply refers to the fact that language and culture since are interrelated, but it is important to note that culture and language come together, and when they come together, students find extensive opportunities to learn through it, to grasp the cultural soul from it. So, moving on to the next point, I will mention that in order to understand the literature, we should understand that the definition of literature keeps on changing and evolving. Now, it is basically a higher art form, and high art form refers to the fact that just simply writing a piece on a paper is not a literature. The literature refers to a text which represents a culture, which represents a history, or it comes up in a higher art form. The other thing to mention is that literature can be classified into two important terms, and this is literary fiction and genre fiction. So, what is literary fiction and genre fiction? That we will try to look up in this slide. Uh, First of all, let us see what is genre fiction. In genre fiction, we see that there is not a much character development, and it is mainly used for entertainment, or it is definitely, taken up to study the plot of a piece. Whereas when we talk about literary fiction, it mainly refers to the human condition or the symbolism that are used. Now, in simple words, I would say that when entertainment and plot are used, the writer simply wants you to read it to have a joy. When it comes to literary, it comes up with a lot of perspectives. So, human condition is often portrayed. Not just that, it comes up with the human opinions, and therefore the reader finds himself in a position to analyze the situation and context that goes through in the text. Since many authors classify literature into genre and literary fiction, we can come across we can come across with a literary text in a variety of settings, and be it poetry or drama, we see that it provides extensive opportunities and it gives the reader a chance to understand the context thoroughly and find himself in a position to reflect what is written in it. Now, the question that emerges over here is that what are the reasons of using literature in the language classroom? Why are we incorporating the concept of literature to teach language? What does it bring? What benefits does it include? So, I'm putting up a few points as mentioned in the slide. The first one is referential versus representational materials. Now, when we say referential, we certainly means that we use language in a daily conversation, and when we infuse this referential material in the language classroom, we incorporate everyday communication mainly for transactional purposes. Now, the second thing is that the text that are presented in foreign language classroom are usually expository. The question, I'm sure, that comes to your mind is, what is expository? So, expository are generally the informational text and are non-fictional that gives information about a topic. So, if you are going to a restaurant and you are ordering something from the menu, you are using the conversation which is of daily life, and that is what referential here refers to. But when it comes to representational material, it certainly reflects a different meaning. So, here referential meaning comes up with the imaginative development, or you can say imaginative involvement of the learner. Since it incorporates imaginative involvement, it gives the learner the chance to express themselves, and they eventually get it out that what is more important, and they find themselves in a position to think in the target language. So I can make a point over here is that it basically helps a learner to think in the English language, or here we are considering English as the target language. So think in the English language. Now again, if we have to differentiate between these two concepts, I would assert that referential refers to the denotative meaning of the text, while representational gives you a form through connotations. So referential gives you denotative meaning, simply takes us to the point that the text is being translated or a text is being considered in a literal way. However, when we say representational meaning, we generally refer to the connotations that are being made. So connotations refer to the cultural context that are associated with the text or the word, and therefore representational material comes with the literature, and that is the reason why we are encouraging representational, that is literature in the language classroom. The second point, as you see here, it is written creativity as an omnipresent phenomena. Why we say this? Because it is important to understand that the skills that we obtain while studying literary text help learners become aware, and they just do not become aware of their surroundings, but they also become the aware readers. And not only this, the literature what we see becomes more creative and imaginative for them. So like we said in the representational materials, it gives the scope to become more creative, and they become in this, and they lead their way towards creativity by getting influence from the creative materials that they're being exposed to. Surprisingly, we say that creative material is not just found in text, it can be found in other important sources. For examples, we can say that creativity is reflected in road signs, such as traffic lights, or you can say in advertisements, sometimes newspaper articles and headlines, and even shop and business names, and we see notices, menus, etc. However, we see that foreign language learners are not able to get the meaning of it, so they find difficulty to understand it. But from the initial position, if they are exposed to representational material, they will be able to find themselves in a position to comprehend such signs and advertisements and so on. So let us try to understand the role of authenticity and motivation in the language classroom, and how does literature brings these two components in the practice. So first, let us try to look upon the word authenticity. Authentic literary texts that are accompanied by tasks and questions, they resemble real life approaches. And not only do these texts motivate students, they offer extensive opportunities for discussions that are important for language development. And that they are reading literary text in the original form, so they find themselves in a position to help build their reading confidence. So I'm mentioning again a point that the confidence that is gained through learning literature is being built up here. So reading confidence is something which is noticed when we go through with literature. So a wide variety of authentic literary texts accompanied by tasks and questions basically it comes up with real life approaches. So not only do these texts motivate students and offer opportunities for discussions, they basically provide the original form, the form in which the reader finds in a position to build their reading confidence and gives them the assurance in the ability to use the language. So, by discussing linguistic choices, by going through syntactic structures, and also understanding the rhetorical organizations and analyzing the tone of the text, you may get to know a lot about the language, and at the same time you will find yourself in a position to use it as well in your real life situations. So, what do you get exactly from an authentic material that I am writing over here? You get linguistic choices. You also come across with syntactic structures. You also come across with rhetorical organizations. And you find and analyze the tone of the work that is produced to you. Now, if students want to continue to learn the language even after completing their formal education, they will just have to utilize their skills, strategies, and habits that they have acquired, and they will be able to use it in varying situations and context. So, now the other point, as mentioned in this slide, is active involvement of learners. So, how come learners are actively involved when it comes to reading literature or teaching language through literature? So, active involvement mainly refers to the fact that what is important is not the result of the interpretation, but the process that is involved in reading the literature. So, by the process, I would mean that the ultimate goal is not to get the understanding of that particular text, but also to develop procedures that are required to understand the text. Now, when I say procedures, I simply refer to the interpretations and also how do we interpret the text, what are the strategies and the techniques that we apply in order to go through the text, understand it, analyze it, build our perspectives, drive the meaning of it, and express our opinions on it. So, it not only involves your skill to get through it, but it also takes you cognitively. It also involves your emotional responses and also how well you are focused in learning the language. Therefore, I am writing in this slide that active involvement mainly comes up with the psychological involvement. It also comes up with cognitive and social factors that makes you to learn the literature and go through it. So, psychological involvement along with cognitive and social factors. And after going through the text, you arrive at different interpretations, you offer opportunities for negotiation, you find yourself in a position to interact with the students and discuss the outcomes of it, discuss the theme of it, and therefore you arrive to what the text is about. Besides, as we see that there is a point written over here, extensive reading. Now, extensive reading provides you the opportunity to go through the text. This extensive reading is highly beneficial and is highly recommended by linguists and authors in order to develop language. So, how can we use extensive reading into our classroom, or what does it bring on our table? Actually, extensive reading catches the interest of the learners. And when we go through the difficult text, we try to simplify the different and varying words, and at the same time, we go through the variety of authentic literary text, which ultimately increases our exposure to the target language, and also it reveals us the unusual and unexpected ways of using language. So, it basically takes us to the fact that extensive reading gives you an opportunity to enhance your exposure, and at the same time it stimulates language acquisition. It also provides motivating and enjoyable way of learning. So, since learners are more inclined towards the material that brings joy to them, so if you provide them the literature and if you give them the opportunity to extensively read the text, they will eventually get through it, and at the same time a number of benefits can also be seen in reading the text. So, the interest will be increased, the exposure to the language will be enhanced, and also the language development, which is our ultimate goal, will be achieved. So, motivation will be taken up as, so motivation will be induced into the minds of the learners when they are exposed to the authentic text, that is literature. Now, we are coming across with the three important methods or approaches of teaching language through literature. So, the first one that we will be dealing with is language based method. What is a language based method? Do you have any idea? Language based method is quite a broad approach because it covers a range of different goals and procedures. So, generally speaking, this approach focuses on closer integration of language and literature. And since this will help the students in achieving their main aim, which is to improve their knowledge and enhance their proficiency of their language, to improve their language and enhance the proficiency of it. So, language based method is widely used in teaching language through literature, and since it has a number of benefits, it comes with a technique and procedure. Now, let us try to understand this approach with the help of an example. The Road Not Taken. This is a famous poem by Robert Frost, and the lines which are quite popular in the literary world is that two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So, these are the lines which are quite famous, not because it has a certain literal meaning involved in it, but it literally tells the intention and the decision taken by the author. So, let us try to look up at it again. Two roads diverged in a wood. It simply means that there were two ways to go or two decisions to take up. but the author preferred to take the one which was not frequently traveled by many people, or was not incorporated by number of people, which was less common and which was not preferred. Something which is hard or difficult to achieve, or it basically encompasses a lot of struggles, and that is the reason why many people prefer not to go through it. And then there is a line that has made all the difference. So why this difference is made? Because the author chose the way which was not traveled by everybody, but he chose to go over struggles, or maybe he chose to take a different decision which is not really commonly taken. And therefore this is the language based approach. What does it tell? That after reading the text, there are certain questions that are related to the text, and one of the important questions is that mention any phrases or expressions you have learned from this poem. Since these lines provide a number of linguistic text that can be incorporated in our daily life, and one of the examples is that has made all the difference. In the present tense, I can say that it has made all the difference. So whatever you are doing, or any kind of thing that has brought some changes in your task or in your life, you can say that it has made difference. So by just looking up at this phrase, you get to understand a different linguistic choice, and you eventually learn this and use it in your real life. Similarly, you can see another example that says two roads diverged. Now this does not mean literally, it actually represents a metaphorical representation of two decisions or two ways which author refers to. Now the next question, as mentioned in this slide, says that does this poem remind you of any decision you made in your life? So let us not go into the literary meaning of these lines. Let us try to connotatively understand that we might have come across in a position to decide one thing at a time. There would have been variety of options to us available, and the options would have been easy, and it would have encouraged us to escape through the difficult ways, but we had to choose something which was different and also was less chosen by many. So the learners are given the opportunity to express their decisions or their ways of looking up at their lives, that what made difference in their scenarios, and what was the thing that they could find themselves in a position to relate that incident with the lines that are given by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So it is stimulating your thoughts, number one. Number two, it is helping you to develop a content, and ultimately you are reaching to the main goal, that is the language acquisition. Or for the learners who are learning it as a foreign language, they are finding a way to think in the target language. Now looking up at this slide, let us try to understand that why language based method is important. So learners will have an ability to understand literature. The second thing is that learners will learn denotative and connotative meaning of the text. The third thing, as mentioned in the slide, is that learners will identify the self-expression from the literary works which may not be found in other subjects, and learners find their ways to appreciate literary works by incorporating into their daily life, and also learners learn literature while learning English and vice versa. Since literature is not merely a piece of text, but it incorporates a lot of information such as social, political, economic, and so on. So through literature, you not just learn the language, but you also learn the scenario. You get to know about the things that are related to you, that are related to the modern scenarios and the ancient scenarios, and you develop a better perspective towards looking at things that are coming forward to you. Now let us look up at this slide. This slide incorporates a procedure of applying this approach into our language classroom. So at first we will see that how pre-reading can help us in building this approach. At first we can do a brainstorming, and then we can help the learners finding difficult words and then introducing the author's work. In the step 1, there is another point which is mentioned over here, that explaining about the form of the poem and in turn discussing the content can also help the learners to go through the text. At the second step, what you can do, you can ask the class, what do you think the poem is about? Since they would now have a sound understanding of what they are going to face now, so they would be putting up their opinions, and also they will try to predict what is going to come next. In this way, you can ask the students to think, what is this poem about, or what is this drama about, or how it is going to be in the how it is going to look like. Now the second point mentioned in the step 2 says that find the themes you have just talked about in the remaining sections of the poem and try to see where they find their unity. And the main component here is that the teacher is the person who controls the entire discussion. The step 3 involves the comment on as responses to the learner. At second, you can ask the learners to prepare report the activities in this section that can lead to deeper analysis of the poem, and let the learner think about the poem. Let the learner think about the text in whatever form it is, and you can ask that how one decision can affect our entire lives. How the speaker choose one path over the other. Can you trace the examples? Can you come up with something that has happened to you and you made a decision like that way? So in this way, you will find yourself in a position to analyze the students' responses, and they will come up with deeper thinking analysis, and their responses will amaze you. The other thing as mentioned here in the procedure is concluding remarks or concluding this session with the points that are mentioned. So these steps can be tailored in accordance with the needs of the audience, and their complexity can be lowered if the learner's level is modest. However, if they are competent enough, you can give them more higher level choices. Now going on to the next slide, we will try to analyze what paraphrastic approach and what it brings into the English language classroom. Paraphrastic approach is important in a way that it helps the novice learners build the language component in their daily life. Why? Because paraphrastic approach refers to the text translation, or you can say to rewording of the text in a simple way. And when the text is difficult for learners, the teacher helps them in simplifying it by giving it synonym, by translating it, and at the same time by paraphrasing it, which is the crux of this method or approach. So why do we use paraphrastic approach in our language learning? By using this approach, students can easily grasp the meaning of words, and at the same time students can understand and they will be able to connect themselves with the text, and it is essentially good for beginners. So why we use paraphrastic approach? Because it helps the learners to build the language, so when they find the text difficult, they get the explanation in a simpler form, and the teacher is the person who helps them. So we can take the example of a small passage that I've taken from the story The Night Train at Deoli, which is written by Ruskin Bond. It is included in many of the syllabi. And now we will read out that there are some moments in life that are never forgotten. It can be anything: a favorite toy from childhood, a time of shared laughter, the pain of lost love, the scent of a flower, sunlight on a distant mountain top, the platform of a small railway station in northern India in the soft, quiet light of early morning. Now, you see, if you teach this paragraph through language based approach, you will find that there are variety of linguistic choices available. For example, you see the pain of lost love, the scent of a flower, a very imaginative use of language is there, sunlight on a distant mountain top. You know, you see moments in life, a lot of phrases that can be looked upon, and you find joy while reading it. But when you go through with paraphrastic method, you would first simplify the language of the text by rewording it. And how could you reword it? By saying that there are some moments in life that are never forgotten. So you can say that, dear students, we might have come across with various moments. Those are memorable moments, be it tragic or happy or pleasurable or something that we would never forget. So Ruskin Bond is going to talk about a moment which he is finding difficult to forget about it because it is so memorable. And you will then go step by step explaining the meaning or rewording the each line. Then you talk about a favorite toy, and you can ask the students to remember a toy which is still there in your mind, and think of the time when you used to have a laughter with your friends, and then you find a pain when you had a lost love, and so on. You can talk a lot of things and give a reference from their real life situations. You will simply try to bring the text close to their life and reword through it. Now, what is the right procedure of applying paraphrastic approach in language classroom? The first step is that you should do brainstorming, discuss the genre and theme. It is coming in the form of poetry or prose, and then you say about what is it going to be discussed. The second thing is talk about the characters that are involved in it. So the narrator himself is involved, and who else are the individuals that are contributing directly and indirectly to the theme. The other step includes asking the class, what do you think this particular genre is about? What theme do you expect or predict? Then you can go up explaining each and every line by rewording it, paraphrasing it, and bringing the text close to the learners. The other thing is that the teacher controls the discussion, because teacher is the person who is the central authority in teaching language through literature. He or she is the person who guides the students with the explanation, directs them, so we can conclude the point that teacher plays a central role in this classroom. The step 3 says that let the learner think about the story and discuss the gist of it, and then you can come up with concluding remarks or sessions that brings to the then you can come up with concluding remarks. Again, these steps can be interchanged with respect to the learner's proficiency of their language, and you can tailor your words in accordance with the level of the learners. Now, the last approach that we are going to discuss is information based method, and this information based is interesting because it brings culture into the classroom. Why is information based approach important? Because it guides students to identify and read information that is the crux of the entire piece. And then we get to know that information based approach brings specific details about the literary elements that are found in the text. And also you can elicit information. The teacher can explain the content of the text to the class, and it provides the students with schema, or you can say it provides the students with enough background information. So not only they just read the text, but they build a representation of something that it means. So what is the procedure of applying information based approach? The first step includes that you can ask the students to read the text. At second, you can ask the students what they think about the text, what is it about, what is its theme. At second, you can help the learners understand the meaning of the text. And then the main component is that you should also elaborate on mood, tone and theme, and that will help the learners understand the intention of the author. So here intention is something which is the priority, or which is the focus, because learners are not just understanding the text, they are not only referring to the connotative meaning of it, but they are also studying the intention of the writer or the author. And when we say that a person is trying to understand the intentions, we mainly talk about the social, political, economic scenarios at that time, and the authors and the influence of those factors on authors writing. So at step 3, we will help students to understand the relevance between the poem and the author's real life experience. So whatever the author is writing, be it based on a happy incident or a sad incident, we will get to know about the author's real life experience through it. The other thing is that ask the students which line of phrase is relatable to you and why. This will help them to increase the level of their learner. This will help them to rethink about the text and the important component that are included in the text, and the relation between the factors that are hidden and the factors that are mentioned. So I'll conclude this session by stating 4 important lines, and these lines tell us that literature is an important component in the language classroom. Not only it brings fun, but it incorporates cultural context. And we know that culture and language are interrelated. They are inseparable entities. We cannot ignore the fact that culture and language, when it comes in the form of literature, guides the learners towards the use of language in an appropriate way, and at the same time they develop enough understanding towards its use. So at first it is written that literature can make the teaching of a language fun. So it brings motivation. With authentic text, they find pleasure. Secondly, it helps us to talk about grammar and sentences with our students in an interactive way, since it gives the students the exposure to know the language, and therefore the grammatical sentences, the linguistic choices that they are exposed to help them to build language. And through this slide, I would like to mention that literature is not just an important component, but it is increasingly an essential component of any language teaching pedagogy, because it brings exposure, it also stimulates the development of language, and it helps the learners to find the ways in which language can be expressed. So we cannot underestimate the use and benefits of literature in the language classroom. We should be able to understand that how literature can provide benefits to us, to our students, and at the same time can enhance our personality, and at the same time the language development. So let us look up at the conclusion. There are 4 points that are mentioned in this slide. Somehow these points conclude the facts of the 3 approaches that we studied, and also that how literature is the crux of the language teaching classroom. At first, let's say that literature can make the teaching of a language fun. It brings exposure, but with exposure, it brings motivation also. It brings fun, and students find themselves in a position to gather pleasure and joy. Generally, extensive reading are used for pleasure. So these three important or four important factors are there that are inclined towards building language among the learners. Second point is, it helps us to talk about grammar and sentences. Since learners go through a lot of syntactic structures, they understand the arrangement of words, they analyze the grammatical structures, and also they find exciting sentences, the ways in which language can be put up. So grammar and sentences are something which are needed to be built among the second or foreign language learners, since they are not knowing about it. And I think literature is the component that can provide them the extensive opportunities for building these two components, that is grammar and sentences. So when they are exposed to different styles, they will get to know that such phrases can also be said in such ways, and therefore they they become more conscious of how how the words can be put up in a better way. The third point, as mentioned in the conclusion, is that we can talk about interesting topics, and we can also encourage our students to express their points of view and introduce them the controversial topics, even and more in depth topics like translations. So through literature, you not only bring language, you bring history, you bring culture, you bring economic condition of the country, the society, and lots of more. So not just that the learners are exposed to the language use, but they are also given the chance to learn about their society, about the way of living, and develop more humanistic, or you can say humanitarian values towards the world. Now the fourth point, as mentioned, is that it is language based, paraphrastic based, and information based approach. These three approaches are the effective ways of teaching literature. So at first we understood that how language based provides the learners the opportunities to choose linguistic sentences and phrases to make their utterances better. And also we got to know about the paraphrastic approaches, where we helped the learners to understand the text by rewording it, by paraphrasing it, by putting up it in more simpler form. And at the same time, we help the learners to understand the information based approach, because it is not just the text. We have understood that behind the text there are social, economical, political factors that influence the text. So it is not just about the author and the text, but it is about the intention of the author, why he writes this text, what is the purpose he is trying to portray, and how he is bringing this text to the audience. So these components make these approaches useful, and if these components are included in the language classes, it will bring excitement, and at the same time, since these approaches are beneficial and they provide the learners the opportunities to go through literary text in many ways, it will certainly bring benefits, and it will stimulate the language learning process in a better way. So with this, we have come to an end of this session. These are the references. I hope you have learned. In the next session, we will come up with some other approaches of teaching language through literature. Thank you very much for joining.
Hi, I'm Chitwan Lalji, a PhD student of Health Economics under the supervision of Dr. Debayan Pakrashi from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Kanpur. In one of my essays, I'm interested in understanding the relationship between consumption of fruits and vegetables and various health indicators. Health indicators, both subjective and objective health indicators like mental health, self-assessed health, various measures of blood pressure and various measures of cholesterol. Measures of blood pressure like systolic and diastolic BP. You have your incidence of high BP, MAP and incidence of high MAP. And as far as cholesterol is concerned, I have tried to concentrate more on total cholesterol, good cholesterol and incidence of high cholesterol. Now before I go on to what have been my major contributions and various policy implications, I would like to briefly tell you about the policy initiatives of WHO and various countries. The WHO, that is the World Health Organization, it started with a campaign of 5 a day. That is, you should have 5 portions of fruits and vegetables per day. That would be approximately, you could say, 400 grams of fruits and vegetables. Now, a portion, before we go further, I'll just tell you what exactly is a portion. One portion is equivalent to a medium-sized apple, or one small glass of fruit juice, which is approximately 150 milliliters, and maybe 3 teaspoons of vegetables. So, the WHO went with the 5 a day campaign, which was further taken up by various countries. Countries like UK, Netherlands, Germany, Norway, they adopted the 5 a day policy, while some went for expansionary dietary policies like France, Australia, Canada, Denmark. So, for example, Australia, it went for 2+5 policy, in which it said that you should consume 2 portions of fruits and 5 portions of vegetables per day. And USA went for a policy of fruits and vegetables more matters. That is, you must consume more and more fruits and vegetables. Now, irrespective of these expansionary dietary policies and dietary propagations, it has been found that only 28% of women and 25% of men, they actually meet the recommended dietary norms of 5 a day portion. So, the major contribution of my work is firstly to find an association between fruits and vegetables, whether there exists a relationship between fruits and vegetables and health indicators, and if they exist, whether due to heterogeneity in the data. So, I will be doing it according to age, by gender and by your weight. So, apart from that, I will go for policy recommendations, in which I am basically studying how much fruits and vegetables matter. Apart from that, which type matters more. So, for that, I have taken data from the Health Survey of England. Health Survey of England is an annual survey which takes data, which conducts information regularly on demographic and socioeconomic characteristics. You have your lifestyle behaviors like an individual smokes or doesn't smoke, alcohol consumption, you have your sedentary and physical activities, and you have various health indicators also which have been collected. Before I go on to what exactly is my research, I would like to concentrate more on fruits and vegetables, like what kind of questions were asked in the survey. Questions like, what kind of fresh fruit do you eat? Did you eat any dried fruit yesterday? Don't count dried fruits in cereals, cakes. Apart from that, for vegetables, they asked how many tablespoons of vegetables did you eat yesterday? So, approximately after this whole survey was conducted, data was converted into portions of fruits, and like for example, 3 tablespoons of vegetables is equivalent to 1 portion. So, data was converted and provided to the users, that is us, from the UK Data Health Survey. So, the major contributions of my paper is that I found a strong negative association between intake of fruits and self-assessed health, then various measures of blood pressure like mean arterial pressure, high blood pressure, systolic and diastolic BP, and your total cholesterol. Apart from that, I have found a strong positive association between consumption of vegetables and good cholesterol. So, it is recommended in a way that if you want to control your blood pressure, you must consume more and more fruits. And as far as vegetables are concerned, they impact your good cholesterol. Apart from that, I went in for a falsification test. A falsification test is basically conducted to know whether the model that you have adopted and the conclusions that you are drawing are not spurious. So, if a falsification test is done to know, in a way it is tested by seeing an indicator, a health indicator which is not being impacted by your consumption of fruits and vegetables, and then we see whether there is significant result or not. If there is no significant result, that means your model is good and your results are non-spurious. So what we did is, for falsification test, we took ear complaints and infectious diseases. Now ear complaints, like if you are deaf since birth or you have some kind of imbalance, body imbalance, that is not being impacted by your consumption of fruits and vegetables, and we did find insignificant results. Apart from that, infectious diseases like HIV, AIDS, etc., we found similar insignificant results, indicating that our results are not non-spurious. Apart from that, we went, since there was a lot of heterogeneity in the data, like by gender, by age and by weight, we did the regression analysis. We found results which stated that as far as fruits are concerned, it impacts a male's health more than a female's health. So it is basically said a man should consume more fruits to impact his health, whereas as far as vegetables are concerned, they impact a women's health more. But this has been only seen as far as cholesterol is concerned, the various measures of cholesterol like total cholesterol, good cholesterol and your incidence of getting high cholesterol. Now after this, we went in for a policy implication, and in the policy implication we tried to find two policy implications: what matters and exactly how much portion matters. So as far as how much portion matters, we have found that on an average 5 or more portions of fruits impact your overall health, that is your self-assessed health, your MAP, your incidence of high MAP and incidence of high BP. But if you want to have a good mental health, so you can optimize your mental health by consuming 3 or 4 portions of fruits as well. And similarly, as far as self-assessed health and total cholesterol is concerned, an individual must consume 4 to 5 portions to optimally have the impact of consumption of fruits. Apart from that, vegetables have had a very little impact on your health. It only impacts your incidence of getting high MAP and high BP, and it's seen that only it impacts when you consume 5 or more portions of fruits. So an optimum consumption of 5 or more portions of fruits and vegetables are recommended, but fruits have a more impact on your overall health, on various measures like self-assessed health, mental health, your various measures of blood pressure and various cholesterol levels. Another thing that we find is which type of fruit matters. It has been seen that all size fruits, they impact your self-assessed health, your systolic and diastolic blood pressure, your mean arterial pressure, your high BP and incidence of getting high MAP and high cholesterol. But we find that as far as frozen fruits or canned fruits are concerned, they help in regulating your incidence of getting high MAP or high BP, but it has a trade-off. That means there is something negative happening. It reduces the good cholesterol in your body. Apart from this, if you have an incidence of getting high cholesterol, it is recommended that you must consume fruit juices, because it has a impact in reducing your probability of getting high cholesterol. And dried fruits, they impact your self-assessed health. As far as vegetables are concerned, very little impact has been seen. It has only been seen in case of portion of salads and its association with self-assessed health. Another thing that they have seen is vegetables in composite, they have an association with good cholesterol. So overall, my research basically says that there is an association between consumption of fruits and vegetables and various health indicators, and it is highly recommended that an individual, in order to be healthy, must consume 5 or more portions of fruits and 5 or more portions of vegetables per day, but fruits have a more impact on your overall health. Apart from that, all size fruits, they have a better impact on your overall health, your mental health, various measures of blood pressure and cholesterol. So, thank you.